Hey sports fans, Neil here with the Fix Yourself channel. I got a golf cart here, Club Car DS, and the thing that I never liked about it is that the ignition switch was way on the dash, and you sit so far away from the dash, you have to really bend over to turn on and off the ignition switch. I mean, it's not really that big a deal, but there's something else that irritates me too about it, is the fact that these keys here, they're an unusual key. And if you lose the key, chances are you either got to go to a dealer or order one online. No matter what, you're not going to be getting a replacement key right away. So that's kind of irritating. I liked it better in the old days when everything had the exact same kind of key. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. When everything had a key like this. So if you lost a key, it was no big deal. You could just get a key from a hardware store for $1 or less. That was a damn good deal. But that really isn't reason enough all by itself to change your ignition switch. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. But when you have the two things together, the fact that it's got a goofy key that's hard to replace if you lose, and you have to bend over so far to start it. I know it doesn't seem like any big deal, but this golf cart we use for camping, so chances are you'll have a beer in one hand, and it just makes things a little more difficult, you know, when you're trying to bend over and turn on the ignition switch. So what I want to do is I want to put the ignition switch kind of where it is on a car, so it'll be more ergonomic is the word, right? More user-friendly, so you don't have to bend over, you can just grab it right there. So what are our requirements? First of all, it has to be easy to do, okay? It's got to be cheap, and it's got to look sexy. I mean, those are our requirements. But I also did the same thing on the Gator here, because I had the exact same issues on this Gator. On this Gator, the ignition switch used to be down here. Well, it was right where your knee would be. And if somebody bumped your knee, the dog rides with me a lot, and he'd bump my knee, and then I'd break the key off the ignition. So I got sick of that. Later model Gators, they mounted the ignition switch up here. Well, I got my hour meter there. So I mounted mine here, and as long as I did it, I put in a normal ignition switch with a normal key instead of the $5 key that you got to get from the John Deere dealer, and there's no place else available. So, or order it online and wait a minimum of 3-4 days. I like this a lot better. So I did it to this unit, so now I'm going to do it to the golf cart. Now, in order to do this job, the first thing you got to do is you got to determine what the original terminals on your original key switch did, and you have to determine what the wires were for. And with a continuity tester and a test light, you can pretty much figure it out. This is on like I say, on a Club Car DS, but I bet all golf carts, gas-powered golf carts, got a similar thing going on. On this particular unit, this terminal here and that terminal there, this one here in the very center is the constant hot from the battery, and this is the power that gets turned on when you turn the key on. This terminal right here is the ground, and then this terminal right here on the bottom, that is the ignition kill, okay? So I just figured that out through trial and error, and figuring out what does what. So the next thing I got to do is on my new ignition switch that I bought, I'm going to have to do some experimenting to find out what happens when I turn the key, which prongs get hot on it and which ones don't. So that's what I'm going to do next. I just thought I'd point out too that on this particular ignition switch, the case is not grounded. Some are and some aren't. So that's just that might be some useful information for us down the road here. Okay, so after I determined that, I kind of took a Sharpie and labeled my electrical, what do you want to call it, the terminals, the prongs, whatever you want to call them, I labeled them. I got G for ground on this one, and K for ignition kill on this one. So this switch here is for this prong here is for kill, this is for ground. You could go the other way, I suppose, but being closer to the outside, it just seems like it's more intuitive that would be ground. So I'll hook my ground wire up to there and my kill switch wire up to that one right there. Okay, the next thing we'll do is we'll find out which one will become hot when we turn the key, when we supply power to whatever one of these should be the main power terminal. All right, what I did here through trial and error, I found out which of these terminals have continuity between each other when the switch is turned off, and which ones have continuity when the switch is turned on. Okay, now we really only need to use 4 terminals, and there's more than 4 there, so we can ignore some. Through trial and error, I found out what they were just for elimination purposes, really. But here we got ground, and over here we have kill. So there's continuity between those 2 prongs right there, that one and that one, when the key is turned off. Then I do some more hunting and pecking when I had power applied to one of the terminals, which one turns on when I turn the key on. And I labeled that one H for hot, so your constant power is going to go to that terminal. And then the rest of your electrical, which I labeled A for accessory, is going to go to that terminal. This one here, labeled S is start. We can ignore that because golf cart's starter engages when you depress the accelerator pedal. So we can ignore the start terminal. And then there's one terminal there that I never even really figured out what it was for, and I really don't care. Okay, so now that we got that figured out, the electrical part of it, my plan for mounting it is I want to have this someplace that's out of the way, but also easy to get to. So I'm thinking I'm going to duplicate kind of like what they have on cars, and I bought this outdoor electrical box here. I'm going to mount that to the steering column with hose clamps, and then have a piece of PCV conduit to run my wires through. And so I'll put that all together and paint it black so it matches the rest of the golf cart. One other thing I thought I mentioned, I removed the one and only fuse, well, at least on this style of golf cart, so I don't short anything out. And to do that, underneath the seat, you got to take off the hose for the air cleaner, and then this top of this fuse panel comes off, and there's just one 10-amp fuse right there. You pull that out, and that cuts the power, so you don't have to worry about shorting anything out while you're working on it. So I temporarily put the dash panel back in, and I'm going to test fit my piece of electrical conduit there, because I'm going to run it straight down through to about there. Now I'm not going to be able to show me doing this because it's going to take both hands. I won't be able to hold the camera, but I'll show you the end result. All right, I got this all mocked up now, and now all I got to do is paint it to match the rest of the golf cart. And what I did is I made a reference line right there, so when I finally glue this together, that angle is going to be facing in the right direction. And I don't think I'm going to use PCV cement for this, because I might want to take this apart if I ever had a problem with it. So what I'm going to do, when I paint it, I'm going to paint that. I'm going to pull this off and paint it first, and then just jam it into this fitting here. And the paint ought to glue it on good enough that it'll hold it, and that's all the better it needs to be. But it'll also be weak enough that I could break that connection if I ever needed to take this box off for whatever reason, you know. So that's the way I'm going to do it. So I got my ignition switch in there just to see how that worked. It seems like it'll work fine. So I'll take that out and I'll reassemble the lid on the box, and we'll paint her black. Okay, sports fans, I got the paint on one side of my pieces here. It's an excellent drying day. The paint should dry rather quickly. But while that's drying, we'll turn our attention to extending the wires so they'll be long enough to reach our ignition switch's new location. And so we got to extend that, them, and those. And as well as this one power wire. So they basically got to have 4 wires running up through that piece of conduit. And we'll do our best to match the colors. What I'm going to do here, too, is I am going to use like a number 8 or number 6, whatever fits through these eyelets, bolt, or machine screw, and I'm going to put a ring terminal on the wire extensions I'm making. That way I'm not cobbling up any of the original wiring, and if for whatever reason I want to go back to the factory ignition switch, I can do so, and nothing on this cart will be molested whatsoever. Alright, so I decided to go with some of the standard trailer wiring for extending my ignition wires, and the reason I did that is it's all molded together, so it'll be a lot less messy behind the dash there, and a lot less confusing. It's heavy enough gauge, and I think it'll do just fine. Also, I put ring terminals on the ends of it, and what I did is I used a machine screw to just bolt wires together. I use quite a few of these machine screws but not very many at a time. In this case, I'm using 4 of them. But I buy the inch and a half length. Okay, so if I need a shorter one, like what I'm doing on this job here, I just take these wire cutters. Most of these universal wire cutters got this. They'll have threaded holes in them labeled for various sizes. In this case, 832. And you just turn your screw in to the length you need it. And the cool thing about this is it not only does it cut it, kind of hard to do one-handed, but it not only does it cut it, but when you thread it out of it, it restores the threads. You know, a lot of times when you cut a screw or a bolt, you'll damage the threads, and this, just removing it from the tool, restores the threads. It's almost like a thread chaser. So that way you can get by, you know, all the number 8, number 10 screws you need, but you can get by with just the length, just having 1/2 inch and 1 inch on hand, and you just cut them to length with this if you need them in a shorter size. Okay, so that's the way I'm doing it. I just bolt my wire extension with a machine screw onto the existing wiring, and then when I'm done, I just cover it up with some electrical tape. That'll be good enough for what it's for. Alright, there's my hose clamps mounted on my electrical box. Now let's put on the steering column of the golf cart and see what it looks like. Alright, I got my electrical box and conduit mounted on the steering column and got the wires ran up through it. The hose clamps seem to be working pretty good for the mounting system. Okay, got some zip ties just to keep that conduit from dangling on there. So now we'll hook up the wires and see what we got. Alright, there's one other thing that I forgot to show you on this video, and I didn't realize, so I was actually editing the video, so I had to come out here and shoot a little bit of extra footage. When you're putting this together, you might come to realize that there isn't enough room to fit this ignition switch in this box. The prongs just about hit the other side of the box. Now you can remedy that problem pretty easily. This is how I do it. I just take these prongs and I just bend them like that. It ain't gonna hurt nothing. You can just bend the terminals by hand. They'll still work just fine. I'm kind of doing it one-handed here because I'm holding the camera. But you just take them and just bend them like that, and then they'll fit in that box no problem. Okay, so that'll take care of that ignition switch not being able to fit in that box. All right, here's our final product. And like I say, the nice thing about it, the advantages of it are, it's much easier to reach the ignition key while you're sitting. Even while you're sitting back, you don't have to lean forward in the seat. You can just turn it the other way with the other ignition switch. You have to bend way over here. It doesn't seem like a big deal when you're just talking about it, but when you're experiencing it is. And maybe more importantly, it's just got a normal key. So you lose a key, you go to the hardware store and buy a new key. So that's kind of a good deal there too. All right, here's our finished product. The nice thing about it is, you know, before you'd have to bend way down here to start it. Now you can just, without even leaning forward in the seat, you can turn on your ignition switch, which is pretty nice. And also, like I said, if you ever lose the key, it's just a normal key. You can go to the hardware store and buy one, so you don't have to worry about being stuck without a key. So if you like this video, I hope you like, share, subscribe, you know, do everything it takes to make this the #1 channel on YouTube. Until next time, we'll see you here on the Fix Yourself channel.